Welcome to my next version of Quarantine Cuisine. My name is Chef John Bell. I'm a certified executive chef from the American Culinary Federation, and I'm the culinary educated teacher at Leesburg High School. This video is to kind of waste some time, give some information to my students, and hopefully maybe give some people some knowledge that they didn't have before, have some fun, and enjoy some food. Today we are doing a video and a class on Cinco de Mayo, which is a Mexican holiday. Most people have no clue where Cinco de Mayo comes from. It comes from a war, or a battle actually, from the 1800s in Pueblo. They attacked the French and overtook the French in that battle. They ended up losing the war to the French, but they commemorate the 5th of May because of the battle of that general that took it over. A lot of American and Mexicans don't even realize what the holiday truly is. But there you have it, a little history. Now, most Americans, as they see Mexican food, they're exposed to what we know as Tex-Mex or Southwestern food. We have many restaurants that emulate these things. Most Mexican restaurants are Tex-Mex because that's what Americans are familiar with. Mexico has many different types of their cuisines and regions, just like anywhere else in the world. Like the United States, obviously we have Creole food, Cajun food, we have Southern food, we have Tex-Mex, we have Southwestern, we have New England. Those are regions. Mexico's not much different in that regard. Mexico is basically broken up into several regions, and the regions are pretty diverse like the United States. You have the Pacific area, which is Baja California, which a lot of Americans were first introduced to because of California, a lot of seafood, stuff like that. You have the mountain regions of the West, known for the birria, goat, beef, mutton, pork, and spicy tomato-based sauces. That's where your spicier stuff comes from. Most Americans don't realize that. If you go to like Puerto Vallarta, which is one of my favorite places, or anywhere in Baja or even Acapulco or one of the coastal areas, you're not going to get as much spiciness. You'll get a little heat, but not a lot. You go up into the mountains like Chihuahua or up in those areas, it's much spicier because of the cold weather. So Mexico has many regions, and each region signifies the type of food. We are going to do a little bit of traditional Mexican food, but also Tex-Mex. What is really the difference between the few? It's primarily a few ingredients. Obviously, rice was brought by the Spanish years later. About the 1500s is when the Mexicans were introduced to rice, and they incorporated it in their diet. They did have potatoes. Obviously, corn is one of the key ingredients that most of the Mexican culture used, because it is North America and that region, South America and Central America and Mexico, they use a lot of corn. They use a lot of peppers because those are also from Central and South America and the Mexican region. Spicy peppers, onions, obviously. They use some herbs like cilantro. Cumin, which is really a spice that most Americans equate to Mexican food, is actually Tex-Mex. It is not a spice that was used originally in Mexican food, but we have adopted it. Avocados is a fruit that grows in Mexico. These are Mexican avocados. They're my favorite. They're also known as Hass. They have bumps around them. The flesh is a little bit creamier, a little less earthy. I think it has a sweetness to it, where you can buy like a Florida avocado, or the Caribbean avocados are bigger. They have a more earthy flavor. I prefer the Hass or the Mexican style avocados, just that's personally. Limes, obviously. So what we are going to do is we're going to introduce you to several ingredients that the Mexicans did use, and then we're also going to introduce you to a little bit of the Tex-Mex style. For example, the Mexicans in particular used a lot of pork, ate a lot of chicken. The original taco, believe it or not, goes back to the Mayans and the Aztecs. They actually ate dogs, Chihuahuas, because they were small, they were easy to feed, and when they were attacked, they could take that meat with them. And so it's kind of funny that Taco Bell's original thing was the Chihuahua. So in honor of our Cinco de Mayo and our Mexican cousins next door to us in the United States, To me, they're a proud people. We're gonna do a little bit of classical Mexican food and a little Tex-Mex and give you a little knowledge. So our menu, we have a frijoles pinto. We're using a fresh pinto bean, which is dried basically. The key to refried beans is starting them. We've been cooking these for a while. They're gonna take a little bit, but every once in a while I'll go back and stir them. You can see that they're starting to get a nice color, the nice brown color. And they'll thicken up on their own. You just let them cook for several hours slowly. You can season them any way you want. We are actually doing a little bit of cilantro and chili stock. So we use a little chicken stock in there and about 5 different types of peppers to give it some flavors that we actually roasted, which I'm going to show you how to roast the pepper a little bit later on. Then we have a garlic lime rice that we are going to cook. And then we have carne asada, which is an ingredient that's more Tex-Mex, but it does have a little bit of Mexican attributes from the mountains of Mexico from after the 1600s when cows were introduced more into their thing. So what we're going to make first is we are going to make a guacamole. So we're going to start with our avocados. Avocados, how do you know if they're done right? They should be a little bit soft. We don't want them too soft because we're actually making more. If you went into Mexico and you ordered some food, they're going to give you what's called an avocado salad. It's not going to be what we think of guacamole. You have more chunks of the avocado in it. We're going to just peel it around like this, pop it up. If it's right, take the knife and the pit will come right out. Okay? So we're going to start by getting out our avocados. As you can tell, there's a beautiful color to those avocados. And we're going to start by scooping out that nice flesh. Just take a spoon, any kind of spoon. Keep in mind, avocados will brown early. And then what we're going to do, after we get it cleaned, we're just going to dice it. We're going to do like a medium-sized dice. We're going to cut that in half. We're going to slice it. And we're going to go back. And we want a nice, like, 1/4-inch dice to 1/2-inch dice. And we're going to put them in the bowl. Now, to keep it from browning, what we want to do is we're going to use some acid. You can use any kind you want. If you were making, like, a pineapple avocado salad, you could use pineapple as the acid. You can use lemons. We are going to use lime. I like the flavor of the limes better. So we're going to squirt a little bit of lime on that just to keep it from browning to get that ready. Okay, so with avocado salad, you want chunks. You don't want it completely mashed up. It'll break down a little bit with the lime juice, which is what we want. So we're going to add some tomatoes. So for my students, we have a medium dice. We have a small dice of tomatoes, so we're getting our knife cuts in. Now, the Americans use lettuce, and the Mexicans call it lechuga gringo, meaning the white man's lettuce. They use a lot of cabbage, so we are going to use some cabbage over here. That's what we're going to place it in. You can put the cabbage in here if you want, but we're going to use a little lettuce, which I did a chiffonade, which is where you roll the leaves up and slice them really thin. So we're going to add that to it. That's going to give that avocado a little more green color. It'll help absorb some of the liquid, so it won't break down as fast. So as you notice, it's more of a salad than a guacamole. You got the nice chunks. Now, we're going to add just a little bit of onion. Okay, not much, because the acid will help break down that onion if you have an allergy like I do with raw onions, but the acid sitting in there will be all right. We're going to add a little salt. Don't go too wild. You can always add more as you want. A little black pepper. And then now something that I do when I was in high school, the first girl I ever really dated was Mexican. And her mom would prepare insane classic Mexico food like menudo, which is a soup that's phenomenal. But the foods that I learned from them and watching her mom intrigued me. And then as I was older and got to spend a lot of time in Mexico, I learned more. So what she used to put in her avocado is a little bit of mayonnaise. So we have about a tablespoon of mayonnaise. And the reason I'm doing that, it'll cream it up, but It gives it a little flavor. And as you can see, it makes it nice and creamy, but you still keep those chunks. But it'll also keep the avocados from turning brown and adds a little fat to it. And it'll keep the color. So we have this beautiful avocado salad with chunks. It can be broken down. And then we're going to take this and we're going to put it into our nice, so that when we go to serve everything later, we have it in a nice little bowl and we can break that down if we want, but it'll keep it from turning too brown. Okay, here we have salsa fresca, also known as pico de gallo. Basically what pico de gallo is means beak of the rooster. It's a mixture of fresh peppers, onions, tomatoes, cilantro, and an acid, lime or lemon, and that kind of breaks it down. You could tell the colors. We used organic and nice tomatoes. We got some yellow tomatoes. We got some red tomatoes. It's starting to juice up. We made this ahead of time so it'll sauce up. If you go to Mexico, they're going to call it, for the most part, salsa fresca, and depending on what they have available is what they're going to give you. I made this mild that only has one jalapeno without the seeds so that my family can enjoy it. You want it hot, you can add the seeds. You don't have to, but you want to let it sit down. This is 2 tomatoes, 1 yellow, 1 red, a half a white onion, a bunch of cilantro, 1 lime, just a pinch of salt, pepper, and 1 clove of garlic to keep it fresh and simple. So we're going to let that sit. But it's an easy way to add some flavor. And then there's different types of salsas depending on what you want. This is a fresh one that can be made. It can last for about 3 days before it breaks down, but it's nice and refreshing, and it gives a nice burst when you eat a taco or whatever you have with it. So as we get ready for our Cinco de Mayo dinner, we finished our guacamole or our avocado salad. We're going to cook some tortillas. Now, keep in mind, Mexicans did not use flour tortillas. That is a Tex-Mex thing. So, like I said, in high school, I was introduced to true Mexican way of cooking things. So I'm going to do that. This is a corn tortilla. I have a little bit of oil. We want to get a little hot, not too hot. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a traditional soft shell out of corn. Not a crunchy taco, because the crunchy was invented by Taco Bell in the 1940s. And a hard shell was never known by Mexicans. They always did soft shell. So it should be cooked. It only takes a few seconds in some oil. And it'll cool, but it'll still be pliable, like you can see this one. And it can be rolled up without cracking it, but the corn is actually cooked. So you can see that it's kind of cooked around it. Doesn't have any clear spots. If you continue doing it longer, obviously it'll become crunchy, and we don't want that. We want a soft taco as like the Mexicans would use. So as I said, traditionally the Mexicans made soft shells out of maize, which is a ground corn, and they use it for everything. But somewhere in the 40s and 50s, a gentleman named Glenn Bell created the crunchy taco, which he was the founder of Taco Bell, and they went on from there to what Americans consider a taco. As you can tell, the pinto beans are starting to cream up. They're starting to look really nice. The sauce is getting thicker. That's when we're going to add our cilantro into it. We want to use fresh cilantro. The beans will have about another half hour to cook, give or take a few minutes, but add the cilantro towards the end. Will add much more flavors, and the oils will extract in them much better. If you're using dry, you put them in the beginning. Okay, we're going to do the garlic lime rice. We started off with some shallots, some green peppers. You can use green chilies if you want a little kick, but I don't want to have any kick to it because we have enough hot sauce and stuff like that. We want to sweat them, which is in a little bit of oil, constantly stirring. Again, for my students, you have a nice small dice for both of these, and you can go a little bit smaller if you want to do a brunoise. Once they're sweated, then we're going to actually cook the rice in it. After we get the rice coated, then we'll add the garlic, so it's a little bit more intense of a garlic flavor. And once we add the water or stock, then we'll add the lime juice to that. Okay, as we're getting ready for our traditional tacos for Cinco de Mayo, like I said, we're doing a little bit of traditional Mexican and a little Southwestern and Tex-Mex, and trying to explain the differences. So what we're doing is our toppings right now as our grill is waiting. As most people don't realize, most Mexican food was done over an open fire. So we're going to do it over charcoal because I think it's more authentic. Although we're not using pork, we're going to use beef instead. We like beef, so that was our choice. So we have our tomatoes ready, and we're going to chiffonade our lettuce, which is basically a shred. And for my students, they know that is a classical cut. It's a French cut. So using the knife, keeping your fingers close. You don't have to necessarily roll it. We're using organic romaine that's grown locally that we got from Dirty Dog Organics. So we're going to get our lettuce ready. It has a little softness from the green. We have the vitamins from the nutrients from the dark green. And then we have the crunch from the heart of romaine, which gives it a little texture. So just a little cut. So we have a small dice now. We have a medium dice. We have a brunoise, and now we have a chiffonade. Okay, for our Cinco de Mayo, we chose carne asada. It is a marinated steak. It's garlic, cilantro, a little bit of oil, a little salt and pepper. It's a lime juice. It's a really wonderful marinade. Like I said, traditionally in Mexico, they eat a lot of chicken, seafood, depending on where you live, and pork. Carnitas, which is a pork that's roasted or fried, is one of my favorite. But if you've ever been to a quinceañera, which is a birthday party for Mexican girls, it's unbelievable. They take the whole pig, they roast it slowly. There's nothing better than that. Americans need to be more understanding of the influence of our country with the Mexican workers and the people. They're beautiful people. Their food is phenomenal. It has great flavors. So our carne asada, we're getting ready for the grill. It's been marinated for about 2 hours. With beef, marinated a little bit less. Chicken, a little bit longer. Seafood, you got to be careful not to use an acid because it will cook it like a ceviche. If you put shrimp and lemon, that lemon will actually cook the shrimp. So you have to be careful unless you're going to eat it right away. So chicken or poultry, marinate for 6 hours or more. Meat, under 2 hours. Next, we have our peppers. The green chili sauce that I made is made with a hatch green chili that we bought when they're in season. They're usually in season around February to May, depending on where they're grown. They're from one spot in New Mexico. They are crazy hot, but they're phenomenal tasting. So I've already roasted them, and what I did when I get them in fresh, I roast them and then I freeze them. But I'm going to show with these peppers, I have a jalapeno and a red pepper. I'm going to show how to roast it on the grill. Then we have our corn that's ready to go. It has just a little olive oil, and then it has my spice. If you took my class, everyone knows the infamous French fry season. It's an all-purpose spice. We make all our own spices in my house. I make all my own blends at school. I don't buy pre-made spices. I never have in over 30 years. Chef Paul Prudhomme, years ago, I met while I was in high school, inspired me to work with seasonings and spices. From that day forth, I've never bought a pre-made spice. So this is our Mexican corn that we're going to grill. We have everything ready. When we go out to the charcoal grill, we'll sear it, we'll mark it. The corn, we're going to cut off the cob, and we're going to saute it with the onions and peppers and just a tiny bit of cream. And then the meat we're going to grill, and we're going to roast these peppers over that open flame. You can use a gas grill if you want. You can use a pan if you really need to, but charcoal, as my brother Greg always says, is the only way to grill. So we're going to do charcoal because wood isn't going to work with the heat in Florida, and I don't have that kind of wood, so we'll use charcoal for today. Okay, when you're using charcoal, you want to make sure most of your coals are white. We have a little bit left to go, but we want to go ahead and start the veggies because we're gonna start to sear them a little bit. We want to get on the outside of it so that it doesn't burn too quickly, but the oils are going to catch it on fire. And we're going to brown our corn a little bit so that we can get it charred just a little bit, get it popping. And once it chars, like with the peppers, it'll blister that skin and we can peel it off. So we want that heat, and then we want the middle really dead center. When we go to cook that meat, we want to sear it really fast so that we get that nice char flavor, but it keeps the inside medium rare, is what will give the meat more tenderness and more flavors. All right, we have our green chili sauce. These are hatch green chilies that were roasted similar to our red pepper. How you can see it's roasted, and we're going to show you how to peel that in a minute. It's the green hatch chili peppers roasted and then put in here with a little bit of onions, a little bit of salt and pepper, chicken stock and cream. Now, once I cook it down and it reduces, this was full when it started, so figure 2 cups of cream reduces down to 1 cup of cream. It's heavy whipping cream. Okay, once I'm ready to add the cheese, now keep in mind cheese is not a Mexican ingredient, it is a Southwestern ingredient. So we're gonna add the cheese for the Southwestern and the Tex-Mex flavor to it. But traditionally a Mexican didn't use cheese in their cuisine. So the main thing I wanna show you is when I am done boiling it, I turn off my stove, I pull off the heat, and the cheese is shredded really fine. You put in a little at a time, let it sit on the top, you can see it. Once you put the cheese in, you wanna whip it. Now when I whip, I go from the outside in. I do not go in a tornado bowl because that goes out. I go from the outside in, and then I bring it around once, and then I come back in the middle. And I go different directions, and I'm gonna stir that. The biggest difference is like, picture making a macaroni and cheese. You don't want it to clump. You want that cheese to incorporate into the sauce so it's creamy and not chunky. So as I mix it, each little bit I put in, I'm gonna stir until I can see the cheese is completely incorporated. You don't want it to break up as it'll separate in the cream as the oil's in the cheese, and you'll have it separate. Okay, when you roast the pepper, for example, jalapeno, once you roast it, if you smoke it, it becomes a chipotle. But once you roast it, the skin comes off. That's the whole point of it, is to blister it. It takes a little to get used to, but notice the skin comes off it. That's what you want, is what's in the middle of it. It gives it a different flavor. You see how that skin comes off? It makes it more tender. You're not chewing on like fibers. But keep in mind, with a jalapeno, for example, the heat factor, say a jalapeno is a 2 to you, it's going to be now a 5. If it's a 5 to you, it's going to be a 10. So as you roast the pepper, the whole point is you can see it blistering. That's what we want. We want to blister it so that we can pull it off. So what I did was I did the jalapeno and the red pepper, because we're going to mix these two together. We're going to add it to that green chili sauce to sweeten it up a little bit and take a little of the heat off of the hatches, because the hatches are hot. Now, so there's your peppers. Now your corn. Depending on where you go, if you go to a food truck, they may give you the corn on the cob, or they may just give you the corn cooked. So what we're going to do is, we got it nice and browned and nice and grilled. We're going to take it. It also takes the hairs off that corn by cooking it like that. You can see where we're getting as far as we can get. Just take your knife, and you're just going to go around the corn until you get all the kernels off. Now, a couple reasons I want to cut it off. One is, it's much easier to chew, and as you know, when you eat corn, you do not digest it unless it's been broken down. So we want to be able to digest the corn. So we want to cut off the cob, and we're going to saute it with our vegetables, and we're going to give it a unique flavor. So what we're going to do here is we're going to finish our Mexican corn, and then we're going to grill our meat. We have everything else ready. The rice and beans are keeping warm in the ovens. We use a little olive oil, and I use just a little butter. Obviously, when we're working with corn, people like butter with it, but I don't want too much butter because of the fat and health reasons, but I want a little bit of flavor. When you use red onions, they're a little bit milder, so we want the red onion in there first. And this is different than sweating it. We want to let those onions just sit, and instead of moving the onions around, I'm going to move the oil around so they'll let them brown. If your pan's hot enough, which saute means, so we have a different technique. We're drilling outside, which is a dry heat. We're sauteing, which is a dry heat. This has a little bit of butter, oil, a little fat, which is what sauteing is. Very hot, so it'll sear it. And if you look at the onions, they're starting to already brown, and you can smell the sugars coming out of them. So it only took a second to get those onions ready. So we're ready for the next thing. We're gonna add some red pepper, because we want the color and the sugar from the red peppers, because corn's sweet, so we want that sweetness to come out. That's really the secret to doing a Mexican corn, is the sweetness with a little tiny bit of heat. So we're gonna let them go in there for a second. Once we have that, with the peppers brown a little bit, we're gonna add just a little bit of salt, okay? We're gonna add a little bit of pepper. Now you can change by heat-wise. We're gonna keep ours mild. This is not everyone in my family likes heat. I can always add some crushed red pepper or some jalapenos to it as I warm it up. We're gonna add just half of our cilantro now. Let that cook in. Then we're gonna add our corn that we roasted on the grill with charcoal. This is an homage to my brother Greg. He's the oldest of 10. He told me that you only grill with charcoal and wood, so I'm doing that for him. Plus, Mexicans did cook outside a lot, especially in the mountains where they ate spicier foods. They cooked a lot of stuff in the ground with wood, massive roasting. So we get our corn and everything in there. The corn's already cooked, so we don't need a lot. We're gonna add the rest of our cilantro to it. Then we're gonna add just a little cream. You can use milk, you can use cream, anything you want, just a little bit. We're gonna lower our flame to about quarter, and you can see it's starting to thicken up, and we're just gonna let that reduce down. Always taste as you go. Make sure that you have enough of the flavors you're looking for, whether it be salt, heat, whatever it is. Like I said, we're not gonna make this spicy. My family's not a fan of spicy. I can always add my heat later. So you can keep it mild. Personally, if it was just for me, I'd put that roasted jalapeno in it, and I would spice it up that way. Okay, as you notice, the grill, it's bright red. There's a lot of heat. It's at least 500 degrees, and that's what we want to cook the meat. The meat's ready to go. We have a nice flank steak, okay? You can use skirt steak. You can use sirloin. You can use a New York strip. Whatever you feel you want to use is good. We want to get it right over the heat to let it sear. I'm going to take that little bit of marinade on there. Once I have it on there, I'm just going to let it sit. And then we're going to cover it, but we want to be careful because we want it to brown first. And you can see how when you put that on there, it immediately cools some of the charcoal down. But we want it super hot so it sears it and gives it a nice caramelization or that Maillard reaction to give it that flavor. So we're going to let that go for about 5 minutes is about right. 3 or 4 minutes on each side. So it's about 8 minutes total. We'll have a medium rare to medium. We'll let it rest because you need meat to rest on the cutting board so the juices don't come out, because if you cut it right away, all that juice comes out and then you have a dry piece of meat. So we'll let it sit after we get it off the grill for about 5 minutes while we set everything else up. Notice the nice color and the nice sear on it. That'll give it juices in the middle, but also the flavor that we're looking for. Okay, we're about done with all prep. Our refried beans are ready. As you can tell, they're not totally mashed up yet. They're creamy, almost like the Creoles do with the red beans and rice. But what we want to do is we're going to push them down, and you'll notice as I do that, it's going to make it much mushier and thicker, like what you see in a Mexican style restaurant or a Tex-Mex restaurant in the United States. Why do they break them down? I'm not really sure of the exact reasons, except to get more of the flavors and the protein, so the bean itself breaks down in your body, which makes the most sense to me. But as you can see, it starts to thicken up really nice. We want them a little bit creamy, though, so that it's not completely just a paste. As you reheat these beans, is what they do in most Mexican homes or restaurants. They get even thicker than that. Okay, we have our carne asada. I left a little lime because I like to finish it off with just a little bit of lime, just to over top of it. That'll give it some acidity and it'll make all the other flavors in there pop real well. It's kind of nice. All right, so I want you to notice, if you can see here, meat is like wood. If you look at the wood, it has grains. The grains go horizontal here. When you're cutting any type of meat, you want to make sure that you cut it against the grain. So if you look at it, the grains go this way. We don't want that, so we're going to cut it opposite. Just like wood, if you cut wood with the grain, it splinters. If you cut it against it, it gives you a clean cut. Meat's no different. That's what makes it more tender. So as you cut it, you can see the meat looks uniform, where this way it looks sliced. So you want to cut it uniformed and against the grain, so that it doesn't shred up and it makes it more tender. That's the whole point. Now, if it was technically like a fajita comes from the Spanish word faja, which means stripped. That's where fajitas come from. That's more of a Tex-Mex deal than a Mexican deal. Mexicans did eat tacos, and they did a lot of things that they had ready, fresh, what was in their yard, what was in their gardens. As most people know, that Clinton, when he was in office, he created world trade, and it hurt Mexico a lot. Then all those farmers came to the United States. Americans get mad at Mexicans because they take their jobs, but most Americans don't want to do the jobs the Mexicans do. That's the truth of it. Mexicans are hard workers. They're extremely skilled in kitchens. That's why they have so many restaurants. They're very loyal to each other. They do not turn to crime very often. That's a very small myth. I would like to say that in the 17 years I've been teaching and coaching soccer, 80% of my soccer players are from different parts of Mexico. Each one of them gives us a different piece of history from their culture, of their food. The kids bring me food. Tamales. I've had tamales from 8 different parts of Mexico, all a little bit different, with unique flavors from their family and from their region where they're from. Embrace that. Learn from their culture. Learn the techniques and the skills and the flavors they use. Because as you can tell, it's vibrant colors, like their country itself. Rice, corn, beans, chilies. Vibrant colors in the pico de gallo, beak of the rooster. Beak of the rooster was created for the caballeros, which were the cowboys of that time. The whores or the women would feed it to the men because they were drunk, and it would help sweat them out. Sweat out the alcohol so that they can get out and work again. Avocado salad, or what a lot of Americans call guacamole. It's got a tremendous amount of vitamins and minerals in your body. Lechuga gringo. It's a lettuce or a cabbage that the Mexicans might use. Tomatoes, any kind of tomatoes, the more organic you use, the better it is. Corn, again, in the tortillas, not flour. As we know, flour has people have a lot of allergies to flour. That's not normal with the chemicals we use. Use a little bit more corn. Not that corn's great, but when you break down the corn, it helps you digest. So embody yourself, embolden yourself to try something different. When you do a Taco Tuesday, think of the Mexicans that helped build this country. Whether it's Texas, that the people in Texas believe it's theirs, their history is reflected by the Mexicans that lived there, the Spanish that took over Mexico. This is a culture that goes back thousands of years. Chocolate and mole. There's so much history and flavors in their food. Let's learn from it. Let's honor them, because they are part of our culture. Mexican American, American Italian, Jewish American, French American. We are all a piece of something. Except for the Native Americans, they are truly Americans. So let's learn from each other, grow, experience food, love the flavors, and travel in your own kitchen and try something unique. So remember, Tex-Mex comes from Texas. Southwestern comes from New Mexico. Both influenced by the Mexican people, their culture, but they are different. But you can incorporate both, create your new dishes, enjoy the love of food.